If you're charging a planning fee but not looking at your client's tax return, like what exactly are you planning or what are you charging a fee for? Because you're not going any further than most others.
The From Busy to Rich podcast helps financial advisors by providing strategies and insights that will not only change your life, but practice.
Well, right now it's tax season, and most people think about taxes for about 6 weeks out of the year and then forget them for the other 46. Today, we're going to show you why that's the most expensive habit in financial planning. First, love to welcome you from Busy or Rich, where we help financial advisors grow their practices beyond the businesses that they manage and the assets they sell to increase profitability and reclaim their time by providing strategies and insights that will not only change your life but practice. This episode is really for financial advisors who want to differentiate themselves in the industry and entrepreneurs who want to keep more of what they make. And with that, we happen to be in the middle of tax season, and most advisors treat this like a filing deadline. But the best ones that we've found, and Wes, this is where I'd love for you to dive in, use it differently.
This world, Justin, is so overlooked, is what I would generally say. I think on the one hand, you've got the CPA firms that are in large part, they're tax preparers. And that's not a judgment. It's not bad, not wrong. But they will file your return generally on time. It'll be compliant. And they take what you give them and they work with that. What they're not doing is proactive tax planning, where they understand everything you've got going on in your situation. They understand your future that you're trying to create, where you're at now. And that matters. Context matters to what we do. So the more context you have, the more you understand what may apply in this client's case that may be very, very useful, because taxes, for generally most of our clients when we meet them, is one of the single largest expenses they have every year. There's a lot of money that we, in our experience, that unnecessarily goes away to the tax system. So from an advisor standpoint, when we talk to advisors about this, something happens where they tend to put this in their hard pile. It's like, well, taxes, that seems complex, and by, I don't know if I have enough knowledge or understanding. But years ago, probably more than a decade ago, I remember seeing this coming and thinking, we need to be experts in understanding tax frameworks. And honestly, Justin, it's just not that hard when you spend a little time and energy on studying it and going to listen to the right podcasts. Also, getting the right softwares in place that can help you curate these ideas. Because there's kind of some frameworks that generally show up. If you have a client that looks like this, probably these apply. If you have a client that looks like this, probably these apply. So I think in large part, what ends up happening is, one, your value to the client is lower. If you don't have acumen or understanding in this area, and two, your not only is your value lower, but the amount of money the client keeps to fuel their future, which is what this whole thing's about. Most of them would much rather fuel some big idea or dream or hope or project than give it to the Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah, because it seems like, from my perspective, certain clients, again, going back to like when they're thinking about it, or if I've worked with other advisors, they get that draft tax return, or maybe they don't even get a draft. It's the final return. And then they find out they got a big tax bill. And that's when they want to talk about it. Like, whoa, like, what can we do differently for last year? Well, you're really limited now. Like, but I feel like where the disconnect is in having some of these conversations is, what do we do differently for this year to not end up in the same type of cyclical conversation, and something that goes beyond like tax loss harvesting and some of the basics that I feel like within our industry. Did you max out your 401k or your SEP IRA contributions?
We always use this term curation. Yes, is we are curators of information, but curating to what? What is the outcome we want to curate to, and framework we want to curate to? So when we're asking all about the client's life and their situation, constantly living in our heads is the client's story, what they want to create in the future, where they're at today, and what do we have to celebrate, where they come from in the past. And so as I'm curating the questions I'm asking and gathering the stuff, all the information we need to have and returns, one thing that's just consistent is, okay, there are patterns that exist that you're not applying. that if you did would dramatically reduce the amount of money that's unnecessarily going away to the IRS. Here's what those patterns are. Here's how they get applied. Well, how do we go about coordinating these with your CPA if they're, if they're even needed to do so? Because a lot of times it's just something the client's not doing or not taking advantage of yet. And to your point, the curation of many advisors is I curate to place a product. I curate to manage money. And so they will learn a tax idea if it relates to that. But there is so many more things. If they just thought a little bigger, I think about why do we curate to increasing their profitability and quality of life? Why do we curate to human flourishing? Because if you think that way, all of a sudden, all these other ideas become very, very relevant, and you learn them, and they impact all that money you could manage, right? Or products you could place. So it's a trickle down effect. I just believe that most of them either grew up in a system where that was never taught. It wasn't the framework that was given to them. And when it's introduced, I think a lot of times they go, well, that seems very hard. And we can talk about hard in a second, but I think those are generally big impediments. And this is going to make my life a little worse because it's going to be hard.
I love how you say that because meaning our firm specifically, focus on true holistic planning. We charge a fee for our planning, regardless of whether we're managing money or not, and some of the other components. And in order to do that, right, you've got to look at the bigger picture. I love how you talk about it's wrapped in a story, the client's story, because that is holistic. It's not a silo, which in my experience is typically how this is treated. The CPA handles their stuff over there. The state attorney handles their stuff over there. Everything is just bubble planning. But there is no connective tissue other than the client themselves. And I know the clients that we work with, they're all busy. So having to become the subject matter expert, kind of like GCing your own house, right, for a home build, like that becomes not just difficult, but almost impossible and to a negative regard. And a lot of things you see are left undone.
I think it's one of these areas that if just they pay a little bit of attention, again, I don't need them to become a CPA, but if they would just begin a process of saying, what is your pattern for maximizing your understanding of tax knowledge? Is it as simple as, hey, I listen to Mike Check, my friend, the Small Business Tax Savings podcast every week? Is it that I go take this course that exists on it? And then what do I do with the information I'm learning? Do I have a pattern or a system all year long where I'm going to trip over having to have tax conversations about this client and think about this client intentionally so that nothing gets missed and we don't get to the next year and go, man, we should have done that.
It's really hard, and I would challenge with this thought. If you're charging a planning fee but not looking at your client's tax return, like what exactly are you planning or what are you charging a fee for? Because you're not going any further than most others. And I'll throw out a quick stat. Apparently only 29% of advisors currently provide tax planning as part of their overall planning for people who are charging a fee. Well, there are half of those who don't or aren't even considering adding it. The market is wide open from that standpoint. So I love a couple things there. One, give a little insight into how do we approach this and integrate it into the rhythm of our client's plan. I guess a little behind the scenes from that standpoint of how do we actually approach it. And then you mentioned this a little bit. Because we also teach this to advisors, where do you see the main points or reasons of why advisors avoid it? And give a little more there.
Our rhythm every year with clients, we tell all the clients when we onboard them is we want to see your last 3 years tax return. And we have them upload those to us because that really helps us understand what they've done. Now, oftentimes there's not a whole lot to do. There are occasions where we'll find major misses or things that didn't get done with a want to file an amended return. But that understanding, that framework to start. And then we say, okay, in light of what your life is, where you're going, where you're at, what are the things, the filters, the tax filters that we can sift your life through to say, these are ideas we should think about and see if they apply. So we have an initial game plan to start with. And it can be very low hanging fruit things, everything as simple as, hey, you're not paying your kids for your business and you could, and your business gets a deduction and you don't pick it up as income. It could be renting your house for 14 days, the Augusta rule, where their business gets a deduction. They don't pick it up as income. It's just a transaction of money from one pocket to the other. Paperwork has to be done. There's a way to do it. There's reasons you need to have for having the business rent the home. But those are all easy things. Those are all easily solvable things. There's bigger things. There's things like cost segregation studies, right? That we look at that are right now. There's 100% accelerated depreciation, and so for many clients that have a piece of real estate that they're depreciating over the normal depreciation schedule, whether it's 27 and a half years or 39, depending on whether it's commercial or residential. Um, and so they could effectively have to divide that and just take that phantom loss every year. Well, they can have a cost segregation study done for very inexpensive. They're not expensive at all. They'll even do a preliminary one for free. And it'll show them, hey, these are all the things that is 15-year or 7 or 5-year depreciation. And right now, with the rule being the way it is, they can accelerate it all in 1 year. So you have this mountain of deduction, and you'd rather have it today than little by little over time. And then depending on the client, there's a lot of these out there, but more advanced strategies. But just if they're charitable, if they're not, if they are donating, yes. So we can go through specifics on it, but these are things that you should have a list of, like all of your core ideas that might apply to given situations. So kind of your playbook. If you're in the NFL and you're playing on a team that's great at running, how do we stop the run? If you get one that's great at passing, how do we stop the pass? If we have one that's got really good defense, but their offense is bad, well, how do we game plan for that? So what you'll notice is clients tend to fit in certain patterns. And so one pattern, these are probably going to apply. In this pattern, these are probably going to apply. So really curating that for yourself and building that library out. And it just takes to your second question, why are they doing it? One, it just may be a space in their head that doesn't exist yet. They're like, well, that's for the CPA, but it's not. The CPA is not doing that. They're typically tax preparers. There are exceptions, but rare. We want to be proactive tax planning because you know everything about the client's life already. So it's really useful to say, okay, of all the things that could impact their profitability and quality of life, let me curate to that. What from a tax standpoint might apply? That's a powerful thing. And it's, as we said earlier, it's not just the tax law that whatever group you came up in taught you because it means you get to manage some money or place a product. These are things that impact every area of tax that if they don't know about it, they should know about it. They should learn about it, and the client needs to know. I think the other thing is, again, we call it the hard pile. Learning anything new is it's like the phases of resistance that we talk about in Beautiful Savage. You've got the one is like, one, is this going to make my life better or worse? Like fear shows up. And from tax planning standpoint, it's very improbable that your life would get worse if you became more tax aware. Like you're going to know things, you're going to deliver, clients love it. They're going to refer people to you because of it. Will your life get worse? Only if you could think of worse as I'm uncomfortable because I'm having to learn a new thing. Anything new, you're not going to be good at yet. You're not going to have all the answers. But you get pretty good pretty fast. So that willingness to constantly be learning and clunky and uncomfortable while you're building that out, just consider that not something that makes your life worse. It's one of the components that is making your life better. It's your state, how you view it. So I think if they change their state a little bit to say this is a positive thing, if I'm not uncomfortable, I should feel bad. I feel like my life is worse, and it's going to add massive value to your clients, and ultimately you're going to have more money to manage and more products to place as a result.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to From Busy to Rich. If you're listening and something sparks a question or you just want to explore these ideas further, visit us at wesyounglive.com or email us at info@wesyounglive.com. You'll find free resources, tools, and ways to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
I feel like that's one of those ones, fear, especially for somebody who's been in the business a while, it's one of those ones that's probably easily overlooked or thought of as not being such a big deal. But I can attest, like when you get good at something and you've got a certain kind of trust and recognition within an industry, it's really hard to then go position yourself to not be the the expert in the room when you're used to being the expert in the room or something, and being willing to say, I don't know right now, but I'll go get you the answer. Like that gets harder and harder. I feel like the longer you are in the business.
I do too. I think that if you don't have an ethic for it, you're certainly going to slip into that. I also think that just like we talk about all the time, that you could fill up your day doing what you do right now. You're like, well, where's their time for me to learn this new thing? Because you're pretty efficient at whatever your normal is, whatever you've made muscle memory, and you're not at a new thing. So you have to have protected time that's as important as a client meeting, that you don't reschedule, you don't move, you invest that time into not just saying, okay, what are the ideas, but how do I apply the ideas? And so schedule the calendar. Calendar tells a story. You can tell me a lot of things that you want to do and that are important to you. And then I can look at your calendar and I can tell you whether your actions match your intentions. Because intentions at the end, it's direction that matters. And so if you don't have it on your calendar moving in a direction, they're going to remain intentions, and you're going to think about it a lot. You'll hear a lot of things, but you're never going to apply it. It's never going to make a difference and positive difference in you or your clients' lives.
And hopefully, for those of you, whether you're listening or watching right now on YouTube, you're grasping the point of there's a way, if you incorporate this into your practice, to create massive planning value, even though you're not the one preparing the returns and delivering on that side of things. The ability to be a strategic partner and thought and curator of these good ideas and coordination with the CPA, and having those timing components that come in at critical moments within the client's story adds huge value. And I think most people probably already assume what the answer is, but just again, a little bit of behind the curtains. Clearly, this has added, a lot of client engagement by adding this to the practice. What have you seen from a retention side? Is this become a pivotal component, or is that something that kind of wills off over time? Or if they've got a good CPA, do you see this not being as powerful?
Man, I'll tell you, it's such a massive, not just retention tool, but attractant. When you are thinking in this way, when you're curating for human flourishing, not just curating to place product, manage money, and you're looking at everything that could impact this client, including the tax side, the blessing that we have is every year there is, if they would file a return on time, April or October, everybody's going to have to think about or talk about tax if they want to stay out of prison, right? So when that occurs, you have a guy that talks about it. They're talking about it to their friends. They're talking about it to all of the people that are in their sphere of influence. The work we've done, when you're able to build a plan that ends up saying, yeah, look, if we do these 4 things, it's going to save you $100,000 of money that was going away the tax system. They want to tell somebody about that, right? They do. So not only do they want you to stay on the team because they're excited about what you're doing for them, they want to talk to their friends about it. And every week, especially more than just 1 or 2 a week, around tax filing deadlines, we get more influx of people reaching out to us that say, hey, you did this cool thing for so-and-so. Would love to learn more about what you guys do. Can we meet? And so they're intrigued. They're excited to meet with you. I rarely have had anyone ever say, hey, you did this great asset allocation for my friend. Would you do one for me? Right. But I've had lots of people say, hey, man, I don't know how to do it. That thing where you rent your house or that cost segregation or whatever it might be, seems like it's saving a lot of money. Can talk to you about it. So those are a lot of fun.
We've talked about a lot of things, and we want to make sure that the practical nature of our podcast is what really is at the heartbeat of what we do and why we're doing this in the first place. So if you were going to tell people to do one thing, what's the one thing after listening to this episode? What do they need to go do?
So real practical. The one thing I would say is right now, go add the Small Business Tax Savings podcast to your phone. And right now, go schedule a time where you're going to listen to it every week on a recurring appointment. And all that in and of itself is a big step. If it's on there, and don't move it, make it protected time, listen to it because it's very practical ideas, and really give yourself to it. So Don't just passively listen and like collect information in your head. Take it and say, okay, so what kind of client would this fit for? And that in and of itself will give you ideas when next time you're talking to your clients to say, hey, one of the things that we are spending time doing is just giving a diagnostic on our clients' tax returns. If you will get that to us, we'll look at yours. We'll just see if we see any low-hanging fruit opportunities that you could be taking advantage of to not have a lot of money unnecessarily go away to the IRS. So put it on your calendar, really give yourself to it, write down the application and who you're going to go talk to about it.
I think that also ties into whether you're an advisor or if you're an entrepreneur listening to our show. Don't wait until fourth quarter to go figure out what your tax bill might be when you've got just a small window of opportunity to try and do anything about it. If you're not having these conversations with your advisor and CPA, start today. And there's no reason you can't go listen to the Tax Savings podcast as well. So I highly encourage you to go do that.
Yeah, just to throw one more thing in there, I would say that like something to consider that we have utilized that's very effective is, with our clients that have even been with us for more than a year, so we've onboarded them. We have a mid-year meeting. That's a mid-year strategy session where we're kind of keeping score on things, look at things. Sometimes tax stuff will come up in that meeting that we want to drive, but always in the fourth quarter, because the fourth quarter, they'd have enough information to where we could do a projection and we could use Holistic Plan to do that. Okay, these are the incomes you made last year. It's got like a cool side by side. Here's an estimate of what this year looks like based on what we know. We fill in those numbers and then we say, now, did you do all the stuff we talked about? If they didn't, we need to go do it. Here's what it would save you. And then also, is there anything else that before December 31st we want to get done that would add massive value to you? So every year we just create a ton of opportunity there. We also have all our clients send us, or we request that they send us, I should say, their draft tax return before they give approval to file it. Because every year we find hundreds of thousands of dollars that would have unnecessarily gone away to the tax system, because it's at the end, people or software is filing these and they don't always connect all the dots, even if you've told them or given them the information. So I think having these offers to the client and these meetings are pre-scheduled, by the way, at the beginning of the year. We don't ask the client, we just send them the Calendly. They can move it if it doesn't work, but most of them keep it, and it's a great session to add value, and then they just keep talking about it.
If this changed how you think about tax season or tax planning, please do us a favor. Number one, hit subscribe and follow us, and then send this to somebody else that may need to hear it. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to From Busy to Rich. If something in today's episode sparked an idea or hit a nerve, don't keep it to yourself. Follow the show, share it with a friend, and let's keep building a community of advisors who want more. You can find more resources, tools, and free content at wesyounglive.com. We'll see you back here next time for more real conversations about building the life and business you really want.